Hello there, night wanderers. I am the Joe, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? You found your way here because you know what it's like to crave a story that lingers long after the lights go out. Tonight, I'm going to take you somewhere dark, somewhere quiet, where the air feels heavier and every creak of the floorboards sounds like footsteps behind you. This isn't just another tale. This is your descent into something strange, unsettling, and deeply personal. By the time we're done, you might not trust your own reflection in the mirror or the shadows stretching across your walls. So settle in, turn down the lights, and let me remind you why fear has always been our oldest companion. Are you ready? Let's begin. The first thing I noticed about the house was its smell, a mix of damp wood and old books, as if it had been holding its breath for decades. It sat at the end of Maple Hollow Road, a place no one talked about unless they were dared to. The real talk called it a fixer-upper with charm, but charm wasn't the word I'd use. More like cursed. I moved in on a chilly October afternoon, hauling boxes through the front door while leaves swirled around my boots like hands, trying to pull me back. The house groaned under my weight. Literally, it sounded like it was alive, sighing whenever I stepped too hard on the warped floorboards. But rent was cheap, and loneliness doesn't care much about haunted vibes. By midnight, I realized two things. First, the electricity flickered even when there was no storm outside. Second, someone or something liked to watch me from the corners of the room. At first, I thought it was just shadows playing tricks, but then I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure standing near the staircase. When I turned to look, it vanished. That's when the whispers started. Soft at first, like wind brushing against glass. Then louder, clearer, until I could almost make out words. Almost. They never said anything comforting. Mostly, they hissed phrases like "leave now" or "you shouldn't be here." Easy advice to ignore when you don't believe in ghosts. Or so I told myself. But ignoring them didn't stop them. Every night, the voices grew bolder, closer. And every morning, I woke up exhausted, as if whatever lingered in the house had drained me dry during the hours I slept. That's also when I found the scratches. 3 deep gouges in the wall above my bed, shaped like claw marks. Except I slept alone, didn't I? It wasn't until the 4th night that I saw her, the woman in the mirror. She wasn't me. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, and her mouth twisted into a grin that stretched too wide. She pointed at something behind me, and when I turned, the room felt colder than ever. That's when I knew the house wanted something from me. Something buried deep in its walls. Something I wasn't sure I wanted to find. Asterisk, the next morning, I told myself it was all in my head. Sleep deprivation, stress, maybe even the leftover effects of a bad dream. But no matter how many times I repeated those excuses, they didn't stick. Not when the scratches on the wall were still there. Not when the mirror in the hallway showed me glimpses of her, the woman who wasn't me. When I least expected it, I decided to clean the house from top to bottom, thinking maybe some elbow grease would shake off the unease. It started with the attic, a place that smelled like forgotten time and rot. The wooden stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed up, flashlight in hand. Dust motes floated in the beam of light, and the air felt thick, like breathing through wool. In the far corner of the attic, buried beneath piles of yellowed newspapers and moth-eaten blankets, I found a trunk. Its metal clasps were rusted shut, but after a few good tugs, it popped open with a creak that echoed through the empty space. Inside, there were letters tied together with brittle string, old photographs curled at the edges, and a small leather-bound journal. The journal's cover was cracked, its pages stiff with age. I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor and began to read. The entries belonged to someone named Clara. She wrote about living in the house in the early 1900s, describing days filled with chores and nights spent staring at the ceiling, listening to whispers she couldn't explain. Her handwriting grew shakier as the entries went on, her words more frantic. "They're getting louder," one page said. "I can't sleep anymore. They know I'm here." Then came the last entry, scrawled in jagged ink. "He's coming for me tonight. If anyone finds this, don't stay. Burn the house down. Don't let him win." I dropped the journal like it had burned me. Who was he? And why did his name send chills crawling up my spine? The attic suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. I stuffed the journal into my back pocket and hurried downstairs, eager to escape the oppressive silence above. But the house wasn't done with me yet. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the whispers returned, louder this time, overlapping each other until they became a cacophony of voices. Some begged for help, others screamed warnings. One voice stood out, a man's, low and guttural, repeating the same phrase over and over, "She belongs to me." I bolted upright, heart pounding. The room was freezing, my breath visible in the moonlight streaming through the window. Across the room, the wardrobe door creaked open by itself. Inside, hanging neatly among my clothes, was a dress I didn't own. A long, black gown that looked like something out of the 1800s. Before I could process what I was seeing, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through me, but before I could move, the cold grip of fingers brushed against my ankle. I yanked my leg away, scrambling backward until my back hit the wall. My eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of the touch, but there was nothing. Nothing except the faint sound of laughter coming from the hallway. It sounded human but wrong, like someone laughing underwater, distorted and muffled. I grabbed the flashlight from my bedside table and crept toward the door, my hands trembling so badly I could barely keep the beam steady. The hallway was empty, but the laughter continued, bouncing off the walls like it was circling me. That's when I noticed the footprints, wet, muddy tracks leading down the stairs, leaving behind a trail that hadn't been there earlier. My mind raced. Had someone broken in? Was this some sick prank? Or was it her? I followed the trail, my pulse hammering in my ears. Each step brought me closer to the front door, which stood slightly ajar. The cold night air seeped through the crack, carrying with it the scent of earth and decay. Outside, the wind whipped through the trees, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. And then I saw it, or rather, her, standing at the edge of the property, her figure barely visible in the dim glow of the street lamp. She wore the same black gown from the wardrobe, her hair tangled and wild. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the house. Then she turned slowly, her hollow eyes locking onto mine. Her lips parted, forming a single word I couldn't hear, but felt deep in my chest: help. Before I could react, she vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the echo of her plea. I stumbled backward, slamming the door shut and locking it tight. My knees gave out, and I slid to the floor, clutching the flashlight like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. What had I gotten myself into? The next morning, I woke up on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket I didn't remember grabbing. My neck ached from sleeping upright, and my mind felt foggy, like I'd been drugged. The clock on the wall read 9:47 a.m., but sunlight barely crept through the curtains. It was as if the house itself had swallowed the light whole. I made coffee, trying to shake off the heaviness pressing down on me. Last night's encounter with Clara, or whoever she was, had left me rattled. Was she real? A ghost? Some figment of my imagination brought on by stress and isolation? None of it made sense, but one thing was clear: I couldn't stay here anymore. As I sipped my coffee, I flipped open the journal again, hoping for answers. The entries grew darker toward the end, detailing Clara's growing paranoia and fear of him. She mentioned a man named Thomas, a neighbor who had courted her briefly before turning cruel. He accused her of witchcraft after she refused his advances, rallying the townsfolk against her. "They think I'm cursed," Clara wrote. "They've stopped coming to the market. They cross the street when they see me. Even the children throw stones at my windows. But it's not me, it's him. He's poisoning their minds. I can feel him watching me, waiting." Her final entry sent chills down my spine. "If you're reading this, know that he doesn't die. Not truly. He'll come back over and over until he finds what he's looking for. Don't let him use you." Who was Thomas? And what did he want? More importantly, why did I have the sinking feeling that he wasn't done with Clara or anyone else who lived in this house? Determined to dig deeper, I went online to research the history of Maple Hollow Road. What I found chilled me to the bone. Decades ago, the area had been the site of several disappearances. Women, mostly young, all last seen near this very house. Some said it was wolves or wild animals, but others whispered about a man who roamed the woods late at night, luring victims with promises of love and protection before turning violent. Thomas Whitaker, that was his name. According to old newspaper clippings, he was arrested once for assaulting a woman, but released due to lack of evidence. After that, he disappeared from public records entirely. No death certificate, no grave marker, nothing. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. But the most disturbing part came when I searched for images of him. In every photo, his face seemed blurred, indistinct, as though the camera couldn't quite capture his features. People in the comments section joked about how creepy it looked, but to me, it felt intentional, like he didn't want to be seen. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. Whatever Thomas was, he wasn't human, not fully. And now, somehow, he knew I was here. That evening, I decided to confront the house head-on. If it wanted to scare me, fine, but I wasn't going to let it win without a fight. Armed with salt, because every horror movie told me it worked, sage for cleansing, and a baseball bat just in case. I walked through each room, chanting nonsense words under my breath like some amateur exorcist. Nothing happened, at least not at first. By midnight, the house settled into its usual rhythm of creaks and groans. I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and staring at the scratches on the wall. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I really was losing my mind. Then the lights flickered. This time, they didn't come back on. Darkness swallowed the house whole, thick and suffocating. I fumbled for my flashlight, heart racing. The beam cut through the blackness, revealing shapes that shouldn't have been there, shadows moving where there was no source of light. Hello. My voice cracked, barely above a whisper. A low chuckle echoed through the room, sending ice through my veins. It wasn't coming from outside, it was inside my head, vibrating against my skull. You shouldn't have come here, a voice growled. Deep, guttural, and unmistakably male. Thomas. I swung the flashlight around, desperate to find him. But the room was empty. Just me, the shadows, and the sound of his laughter growing louder. I didn't ask for this, I snapped, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. Whatever you are, leave me alone. Oh, but you did. He replied, his tone almost playful. You opened the trunk. You read the journal. You invited me in. No, I said, shaking my head. That's not how it works. It is now. Asterisk. Before I could respond, the temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the windows, and my breath came out in clouds. Something brushed past me, a cold breeze that smelled of wet earth and decay. And then I heard her, Clara. Her voice, soft and pleading, whispered in my ear, "Help me stop him." I spun around, but she wasn't there. Only the shadows, shifting and twisting like living things. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, gripping the baseball bat tighter. Thomas's laughter filled the room again, louder this time. "What I've always wanted," he said. "A vessel. Someone to carry my legacy forward." Legacy? What legacy? Before I could ask, the floorboards beneath me groaned ominously. I stepped back just as a section of the wooden floor collapsed inward, revealing a hidden basement I hadn't known existed. A ladder descended into darkness, beckoning me closer. Clara's voice returned, softer now. "It's down there. What he's looking for. Destroy it, and you destroy him." Destroy what? I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I grabbed the flashlight and climbed down, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The basement was small and smelled of mold and rust. In the center of the room stood an old chest, its surface etched with strange symbols I didn't recognize. As I approached, the symbols began to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Inside the chest was a single object, a dagger. Its blade shimmered unnaturally, even in the dim light, and its hilt was carved into the shape of a twisted tree. "This will kill him," Clara's voice whispered. But would it? Or was this just another trap set by the house and by Thomas to keep me trapped here forever? The dagger felt heavier than it should have, its cold metal biting into my palm as I gripped it tightly. My reflection in the blade was distorted, like looking into rippled water, but something about it made my stomach churn. It wasn't just a weapon, it was alive, humming faintly with an energy I couldn't explain. Clara's voice whispered again, urgent now. "You have to use it before he comes back. Before it's too late." Too late for what? I hissed under my breath, glancing over my shoulder at the ladder above me. The basement seemed smaller than before, the walls closing in like they were alive. For both of us, she replied softly. Her tone sent a shiver down my spine. Whatever Thomas wanted, it wasn't just me, it was her too. I climbed back up to the main floor, clutching the dagger like it might vanish if I let go. The house was eerily silent, the oppressive weight of its presence pressing down on me. No creaks, no groans, no whispers, just the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. And then I saw him. Thomas stood at the far end of the hallway, silhouetted by moonlight streaming through the window. His face was blurred, shifting like smoke, but his eyes burned with a cruel intensity that froze me in place. He didn't move toward me, didn't speak, just stared, his lips curling into a smirk that sent bile rising in my throat. You think you can stop me? His voice filled the space between us, low and mocking. You're just another pawn in my game. I'm not playing your games, I shot back, raising the dagger slightly. Its glow intensified, casting strange shadows on the walls. Thomas laughed, a sound so sharp it felt like glass cutting through my eardrums. Oh, but you already are. You've been playing since the moment you stepped foot in this house. He took a step forward, his form flickering like a faulty light bulb. 1 second he looked human. The next, he was something else entirely, taller, darker. His features twisted into something unnatural. His hands ended in claws, and his mouth stretched impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. My grip tightened on the dagger. Stay back. Or what? He sneered. You'll stab me. Go ahead. See if it makes any difference. For a split second, doubt crept in. What if Clara was wrong? What if this dagger wasn't enough? But then I remembered her voice, her desperate plea, and realized I didn't have a choice. If I didn't try, we were both doomed. I lunged forward, aiming for his chest. The dagger sliced through the air, but instead of hitting flesh, it passed straight through him like he was made of mist. Thomas roared with laughter, the sound echoing off the walls. Did you really think it would be that easy? He taunted, circling me slowly. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. There had to be a way to hurt him, to end this nightmare once and for all. Focus, Clara's voice urged. It's not about strength. It's about intent. Intent. What did that even mean? Thomas lunged at me suddenly, his claws swiping inches from my face. I stumbled backward, barely dodging his attack. The dagger slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. No, I shouted, diving for it. But Thomas was faster. He kicked it out of reach, sending it skittering across the hardwood floor. You're weak, he snarled, looming over me. Just like her. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Weak. Was that why Clara hadn't been able to stop him? Because she doubted herself? I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. Intent, focus, strength. Then it clicked. The dagger wasn't just a tool, it was a conduit. A way to channel whatever power I had inside me. And if I wanted to destroy Thomas, I needed to believe in my own ability to do it. I dove for the dagger again, grabbing it just as Thomas reached for me. This time, when I swung, the blade connected, not with his body, but with the shadowy aura surrounding him. The impact sent a shockwave through the room, knocking us both off our feet. Thomas screamed a high-pitched, ear-splitting wail that shook the house to its foundation. His form flickered violently, dissolving into tendrils of black smoke. It's working, Clara's voice cried. Keep going. I staggered to my feet, adrenaline coursing through me. The dagger pulsed in my hand, its glow brighter than ever. I plunged it into the swirling mass of smoke, twisting it like I was unlocking a door. Thomas howled again, his voice breaking into 1,000 pieces. The shadows retreated, shrinking back until they disappeared completely. For a moment, the house was silent, and then everything went still. The silence after Thomas vanished was deafening. It wasn't the kind of quiet that comes with relief, it was heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something else to happen. My hands trembled as I lowered the dagger, its glow fading until it was just a cold piece of metal again. The oppressive weight in the air had lifted, but instead of feeling triumphant, I felt empty. Clara's voice broke the stillness. It's not over. I turned sharply, half expecting to see her standing there, but she wasn't. Just her whisper, faint and distant, like it was coming from somewhere far away. What do you mean? "It's not over," I demanded, my voice cracking. "I destroyed him." "No," she replied, her tone tinged with sadness. "You only weakened him. He's tied to this place to me. As long as I'm here, he'll keep coming back." My stomach dropped. All that effort, all that fear, and it hadn't been enough. "So what am I supposed to do now?" I asked, gripping the dagger tightly. "How do I stop him for good?" There was a pause, long enough that I thought she might not answer. Then, "You need to break the bond. Free me." "Free you? How?" "The chest in the basement," she said. "It holds more than just the dagger. Inside, there's a lock of my hair, a piece of me he used to bind me here. Destroy it, and I'll be free. But be warned, breaking the bond will weaken the house's hold on both of us. You won't leave unscathed." Her words sent a chill through me. What did she mean by unscathed? And how could I trust her? For all I knew, this could be another trap set by Thomas, or worse, by the house itself. But I didn't have much choice. If freeing Clara meant ending this nightmare, then I had to try. I hurried back down to the basement, the dagger clutched in one hand and the flashlight in the other, the chest set where I'd left it, its strange symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. This time, when I opened it, I saw more than just the dagger. Beneath a layer of velvet lining lay a small glass vial filled with golden strands of hair. Clara's hair. As soon as I touched the vial, the house shuddered violently, throwing me off balance. The walls groaned, and the floorboards creaked like they were screaming in protest. "You shouldn't have done that." A voice hissed, not Thomas, but the house itself. Its tone was low and guttural, vibrating through the very foundation beneath my feet. I ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. I smashed the vial against the edge of the chest, the glass shattering into tiny shards. The golden strands spilled out, dissolving into dust before they hit the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the house let out a sound so loud it felt like my skull might split open. It wasn't a scream or a roar, it was something deeper, primal, like the dying cry of an ancient beast. And then everything changed. The basement began to collapse around me, chunks of plaster falling from the ceiling as the walls buckled inward. I scrambled up the ladder, narrowly avoiding being crushed by debris. When I reached the main floor, the entire house was shaking, furniture sliding across the rooms as if caught in an earthquake. "Run," Clara's voice urged, louder this time. I didn't need telling twice. I bolted toward the front door, dodging falling picture frames and splintering wood. Behind me, the staircase collapsed into rubble, cutting off any chance of retreat. Just as I reached the threshold, I heard Thomas's voice one last time. "You can't escape me," he snarled, his tone laced with venom. "Not truly." Then, with a final, ear-splitting crack, the house imploded. When I came to, I was lying on the grass outside, staring up at the starless sky. My body ached, every muscle screaming in protest, but I was alive. Round me, the remains of the house smoldered, reduced to a pile of ash and twisted metal. Clara stood a few feet away, her figure translucent but clearer than before. She looked peaceful. "It's over," she said softly. "Thank you." Before I could respond, she began to fade, her form dissolving into the night air like mist under sunlight. But as she disappeared, I noticed something strange. A shadow lingered behind her, darker and sharper than the others. It watched me silently, unmoving, before vanishing too. I sat there for a long time, trying to process what had happened. The house was gone. Thomas was gone, or so I hoped, but something about that lingering shadow made my blood run cold. Because deep down, I knew he wasn't finished with me. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and disbelief. I stayed in a motel on the outskirts of town, too shaken to think about anything beyond survival. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Thomas's face, or rather, his lack of one looming over me, his jagged grin promising revenge. But it wasn't just him haunting my thoughts, it was the house. The way it had groaned and screamed as it collapsed, like it was alive and dying all at once. And then there was Clara, her final words echoing in my mind, "It's over." But was it? Something about the way she'd said it, the hesitation in her voice, left me uneasy. I tried to convince myself I was safe, that destroying the lock of hair had severed whatever connection Thomas had to this world. But deep down, I knew better. Shadows still lingered in the corners of my vision, darker than they should have been. Whispers crept into my ears when no one else was around. Fragments of sentences that made no sense, but sent chills racing down my spine. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, I turned on the TV in my motel room. Static flickered across the screen before settling on an old black and white movie. At first, it seemed ordinary, a grainy horror film about a cursed mansion, but then something caught my eye. A man with blurred features appeared on screen, his silhouette eerily familiar. "That's him," I whispered, my heart pounding. Thomas stepped forward, his face distorted but unmistakable. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the crackle of static. Then the screen went dark, leaving only a single line of text burned into the center. "You can't run forever." I threw the remote at the TV, shattering the screen, but the message remained etched in my mind. He was still out there watching, waiting, desperate for answers. I returned to Maple Hollow Road the next morning. The site where the house once stood was now nothing more than a charred crater, its edges crumbling into the earth like an open wound. Weeds sprouted through the ashes, their sickly green leaves curling inward as if even they couldn't survive here. I wandered the perimeter, searching for anything that might explain what had happened or what would come next. Near the edge of the property, I found a rusted metal box half buried in the dirt. Its hinges screeched in protest as I pried it open, revealing a stack of yellowed papers inside. They were letters, dozens of them, written in shaky handwriting and addressed to someone named Margaret. Most were illegible, the ink faded with time, but one passage stood out. "He comes in dreams now, whispering promises he'll never keep. He says I belong to him, that I always have. But I know the truth. He's not real, not truly. He's a fragment, a shadow of something older and darker. If you're reading this, burn these pages. Burn everything. Don't let him find you." The letter ended abruptly, torn at the bottom as though the writer had been interrupted. A fragment. That's what Thomas was, a piece of something larger, something ancient. Whatever force had created him wasn't confined to the house or even this town. It was everywhere, lurking in the spaces between reality and nightmare. As I read the letters, the air around me grew colder. Frost crept across the ground, spreading outward from the box like veins of ice. I looked up, my breath visible in the sudden chill, and saw him standing at the edge of the woods. Thomas, his form was fainter this time, less solid, but his presence was undeniable. He didn't move toward me, didn't speak, just stared, his hollow eyes boring into mine. "You shouldn't have come back," he said finally, his voice a low growl. "I'm not afraid of you," I lied, clutching the letters to my chest. He smiled, slow and cruel. "You will be." Then he vanished, leaving behind only the sound of footsteps crunching through dead leaves. That night, I dreamed of the house. It stood exactly as it had before, its walls intact, its windows glowing warmly in the moonlight. Inside, Clara waited for me, her translucent figure pacing anxiously near the staircase. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not safe. I need answers," I replied, stepping closer. "What is he? Where did he come from?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone or something to appear. "He's not just a man," she said quietly. "He's a fragment of the veil, a place between worlds. When the house was built, it disturbed the balance, tore a hole in the fabric of reality. He slipped through, feeding on fear and despair. The veil?" I repeated, the word unfamiliar but somehow terrifying. "It's where things go when they die," Clara explained. "Souls, memories, regrets, they all pass through the veil on their way to somewhere else. But sometimes, pieces break off. Fragments like him. They don't belong here, but they won't leave either. They feed on pain, on suffering, until they become strong enough to cross over completely. And if he does, he'll bring the veil with him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything trapped there, all the anger, all the sorrow, it'll flood this world. And there won't be anything left." I woke with a start, drenched in sweat, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Thomas wasn't just a ghost or a monster, he was a harbinger of something far worse. And somehow, stopping him was still my responsibility. The days turned into weeks, and the weight of what I'd learned settled over me like a second skin. Every shadow seemed darker, every sound louder. Even in broad daylight, I couldn't shake the feeling that Thomas was watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The motel room felt like a cage, its thin walls offering no protection against whatever lurked beyond them. But leaving wasn't an option, not yet. Not until I figured out how to stop him for good. I spent hours poring over the letters I'd found at the site of the house, searching for clues. Each one was more cryptic than the last, filled with warnings about the veil and fragments and breaking the cycle. One passage stood out, written in bold strokes as though the author had been desperate to make herself understood. The only way to banish it is to close the rift. Find the anchor, the thing that tethers it to this world, and destroy it. But beware, the anchor will fight back. It always does. An anchor. That's what I needed to find. Something tangible, something real that kept Thomas tied to this plane. But where to start? The house was gone, reduced to ash and rubble. Clara was free, or so I hoped. What else could possibly bind him here? Then it hit me, the dagger. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a key, a tool designed to interact with forces beyond my understanding. If anything could lead me to the anchor, it was the dagger. I retrieved it from my duffel bag, its cold metal sending a jolt through my palm as soon as I touched it. The blade still bore faint traces of the symbols etched into the chest, their glow dim but persistent. Holding it felt wrong, like wielding a piece of something ancient and unfathomable. "Show me," I whispered, half expecting nothing to happen. Instead, the dagger pulsed once, then twice, before growing warm in my hand. A faint hum filled the air, low and resonant, like the vibration of a tuning fork. The hairs on my arms stood on end as the hum grew louder, guiding me toward the door. Without thinking, I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. The dagger acted like a compass, pulling me forward with each step. Its glow intensified as I walked, leading me away from the motel and deeper into town. People stared as I passed, their faces pale and drawn. Some crossed themselves, others muttered under their breath. I didn't blame them. The sight of a man clutching a glowing dagger probably wasn't something they saw every day. But I couldn't stop, not now. The dagger's pull was relentless, dragging me closer to whatever awaited me. Finally, it led me to an old church on the edge of town. Its steeple loomed against the gray sky, cracked and leaning slightly to one side. The doors hung open, creaking softly in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of incense and decay. Pews lined either side of the aisle, their wood warped and splintered with age. At the front of the sanctuary stood an altar, its surface covered in a layer of dust so thick it looked like snow. And there, resting atop the altar, was a book. It wasn't just any book, it was massive, bound in black leather that gleamed unnaturally in the dim light. Strange symbols adorned its cover, similar to the ones on the dagger but far more intricate. As I approached, the dagger in my hand began to vibrate violently, its glow flaring brighter than ever. "This is it," I murmured, my voice trembling. The anchor. Before I could touch it, the temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the floor, creeping up the walls like ivy. Shadows gathered in the corners of the room, twisting and writhing until they formed a familiar shape. "Thomas, you really thought it would be this easy?" He sneered, his form flickering between human and monstrous. His eyes burned with hatred, locking onto mine like chains. "I'm done playing your games," I shot back, raising the dagger. Its light illuminated the space between us, casting strange shadows on the walls. "Oh, but we're just getting started," he replied, his tone dripping with mockery. "You destroyed the house, freed Clara, but you'll never escape me. I'm part of you now." His words sent a chill through me, but I forced myself to focus. Whatever he was, whatever connection he had to me, it ended here. I lunged forward, driving the dagger toward the book. Thomas roared, lunging at me with claws extended. Pain exploded across my chest as he struck, knocking me backward. Blood seeped through my shirt, but I ignored it, scrambling to my feet. The dagger connected with the book, sinking deep into its surface like it was made of flesh rather than leather. The symbols on the cover lit up, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire room was bathed in harsh, blinding light. Thomas screamed a sound so raw and primal it shook the very foundation of the church. His form dissolved into smoke, swirling around the altar like a storm. "It's not enough," Clara's voice cried, echoing through the chamber. "You have to finish it. Finish it, but how?" As if in response, the dagger pulsed once more, its vibrations shaking the ground beneath me. Then I realized what I had to do. With both hands gripping the hilt, I twisted the dagger, prying the book open. Pages flipped wildly, their contents written in a language I couldn't understand. But I didn't need to read them to know what they contained. Fragments of the veil, shards of forgotten pain and suffering given form. I slammed the book shut, trapping Thomas inside. For a moment, everything went still. Then the church collapsed. When I woke, I was lying in the middle of a field, the remains of the church smoldering in the distance. My body ached, and my chest throbbed where Thomas had clawed me. But I was alive. Alive but not free. Because even as I stared at the ruins, I knew the truth. The veil wasn't gone. Neither was Thomas. He was still out there waiting. The field stretched endlessly around me, its tall grass swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. The sky above was an unnatural shade of gray. Neither day nor night, but something suspended between the two. It felt like waking up in a dream or maybe a memory. My chest burned where Thomas had clawed me, and every breath felt heavier than the last. But I wasn't alone. Clara stood a few feet away, her translucent form clearer now than it had ever been. She looked solid, almost alive, her pale face marked with streaks of dirt and exhaustion. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, she smiled, not the sad, resigned smile I'd seen before, but something softer, warmer. "You did it," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. "Did I?" I asked, my tone bitter. "Because it doesn't feel like it." She knelt beside me, her hand hovering just above my shoulder as if afraid to touch me. "You stopped him for now. You closed the rift, sealed the veil. But you're right. This isn't over. Not completely." I stared at her, frustration bubbling beneath my skin. "Then tell me what's left. What else do I have to do?" "It's not about doing," she replied gently. "It's about being. About carrying this burden without letting it consume you." Her words didn't make sense, not fully, but before I could press her further, the ground trembled beneath us. A low rumble filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The ruins of the church in the distance began to shift, rising from the ashes like some monstrous creature emerging from its grave. "What's happening?" I demanded, scrambling to my feet. "The veil is fighting back," Clara said, her expression grim. "Sealing it disrupted the balance. Now it's trying to reclaim what belongs to it, including you, me." "Why me?" "Because you opened the door," she explained. "When you destroyed the house, when you used the dagger, you became part of this world, part of its fabric. The veil sees you as one of its own now." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. All this time, I'd thought I was fighting against something external, something outside myself. But the truth was worse. I'd become tangled in its web, bound to it in ways I couldn't undo. As the rumbling grew louder, the landscape around us began to change. The field dissolved into darkness, replaced by endless corridors that twisted and turned like the inside of a labyrinth. The walls shimmered faintly, their surface rippling like water. Shadows moved within them, whispering voices overlapping in a cacophony of despair. "This is the veil," Clara said quietly. "Or part of it anyway. It's where fragments like Thomas come from and where they return when they're destroyed." "But he's not destroyed," I snapped. "He's still out there." "Yes," she admitted, "and no. His physical form is gone, but his essence remains. Fragments can't truly die, they can only be contained. That's why we need to finish this properly." "How?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting something or someone to appear. "There's a ritual," she said finally. "An ancient one, designed to sever ties with the veil. But it comes at a cost." "What kind of cost?" "Your connection to this world," she replied. "Once you perform the ritual, you'll never be able to return to your old life. You'll exist somewhere between like me." I stared at her, my mind racing. Give up everything? My home, my freedom, my future? Was it worth it? Before I could answer, the shadows surged forward, coalescing into a familiar shape. Thomas loomed over us, his form larger and darker than ever. His face was a blur of shifting features, his eyes burning with hatred. "You think you've won?" he snarled, his voice echoing through the corridor. "This is my domain now, and you'll never leave." Clara stepped in front of me, shielding me with her body. "Not today," she said firmly. Today, you lose. With a flick of her wrist, she summoned a burst of light so bright it blinded me momentarily. When my vision cleared, Thomas was gone, and so was Clara. I woke up on the edge of the field, the sun rising over the horizon. The ruins of the church were gone, replaced by nothing but flat, empty land. My chest still ached, but the wound had healed, leaving behind only a faint scar. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. But then I saw her. Clara stood a short distance away, her figure glowing faintly in the morning light. She smiled, waving softly before fading into nothingness. And I knew I wasn't free. Not entirely. Part of me would always belong to the veil, tethered to it by the choices I'd made. But I was alive, and for now, that was enough. As I walked away, the weight of the dagger in my pocket reminded me of the road ahead. There would be others like Thomas, other fragments breaking free. And when they did, I'd be ready, because I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a guardian,